What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 22. I am the co host of the show, Kyle Anslone, and with the other co host, Will Porter. Will, how's it going today?
Not bad, Kyle. How you doing tonight?
Pretty good. I mean, it feels kind of weird that we're about 2 weeks from the election here, I guess, a little more than 2 weeks. And I don't know. It doesn't feel like an election season to me. You know how some years like the people walk around and say like it just doesn't feel like the Super Bowl this year because like teams they really don't care about are in it, or it's just like there's no superstars in the game or something like that. And yet it is Donald Trump up there, and yet for whatever reason it doesn't quite feel right. I guess it's the whole coronavirus thing, everybody being locked up, but it feels like we should have, I don't know, a couple more months of this or something before the actual election date. Um, I don't know
Yeah, it
if you
is
get any sense of that.
yeah, no, it's weird because I agree. It doesn't really feel like there's an election. It feels like it should have gone on to it just feels like we still have a lot to go. But like it's also felt like they've been campaigning for like 2 years now. It feels like there's or many years now. Just because I don't know, everything seems longer because of the pandemic to me. So there's a lot of weird temporal distortions going on lately.
Right. Well, the campaign season almost feels like 5 years because it really
Right.
never
Yeah.
felt like Trump stopped campaigning and the Democrats never stopped campaigning against him. Like it kind of just went like the Hillary Clinton campaign really morphed into like the anti-Trump resistance, and then
Yeah.
it's just been this nightmare. But
Right.
I don't know. That really doesn't have anything to do with the stories that we have set today. Although I do think they're
Fortunately.
probably, yeah, a little bit more important than the election. And in a lot of ways, some of the most important policies in the U.S. and won't be swayed at all by the election, anyways. I'm trying to look at this list here, Will, and nothing stands for me to think that the policy would be drastically under different than Biden than Trump. But if we're talking about it, something comes up, let me know if you think that there would be a big difference in policy here. Real quick before we get into the stories, make sure you share the show. Conflict of Interest is on Twitter at con_interest. Also, me and Will are probably the most active social media accounts are our Twitter handles. He's at the Will Porter. I'm at Kyle Anslone _. And with that, let's get rolling. First up
Right.
today, we have a story on New Start, and I have two headlines here to kind of describe how this whole thing has gone so far. The first one is by AFP, and it was reprinted at the Moscow Times. Putin proposes 1 year extension of New Start treaty. And then this other headline from the Wall Street Journal: White House dismisses Putin proposal to extend New Start arms control pad. So, it says that Russia put out a proposal to extend it and the White House slapped it down. Will, is this what happened this time? And also, from what I think, representative of basically the entire New Start treaty negotiations.
Yeah, it does seem like it. I mean, like, yeah, those two headlines are pretty illustrative there. Putin proposes and then White House dismisses. And this is we should say to extend the like one of the most important treaties in force on planet Earth right now. It's the one that limits how many nuclear warheads and missiles that both countries can have and how many can be deployed at once. So it is like the major arms control pact governing, covering the US's and Russia's nuclear arsenals, especially after Trump let the INF treaty die. So it's extremely important. But
Yeah,
Vladimir
can I
Putin said,
just add one more thing to that I actually picked up kind of recently, so I don't think I've actually talked
sure,
about on the show. But there's a lot of things in New Start that have to do with like the surveillance and inspections of like nuclear arsenal and nuclear weapons and stuff like that. And all those inspections are in New Start. So not only would you lose like, the official caps, but you would also lose the ability for each side to inspect each other's nuclear arsenals, at least to some extent. I'm not sure, exactly if you're allowed to like look at it, examine every bomb, or if it's like, you see like the certain parts of each plant or something like that. But those inspections, you would also lose a lot of those if you lose New Start. And I believe that's actually a little bit of a sticking point of the Trump negotiations about those inspections and stuff like that. But well, go ahead with your analysis on this.
yeah, sure, sure. And those are good, observations, good things to point out. But yeah, like I think it was on last Friday, Vladimir Putin said Russia was willing to extend this treaty for 1 year with no preconditions at all. And they have actually been saying for quite a while now that they're open to a 5 year extension that's like actually built into the treaty that like provides for a 5 year extension of this. But they put forward this 1 year idea as like a stopgap measure, I think, just because the treaty is set to expire in February, and so that deadline is coming up pretty fast. And they just, I think, wanted to get something in there so that they could negotiate, buy themselves some more time to negotiate. But the U.S. rejected that offer out of hand. I think the National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien came out and said it was a non-starter. Like it was so far from what would be acceptable, they called it a non-starter. Although to me, it seemed like that's exactly what it was, though. Was a starter, like something to get them started, to buy them time to negotiate more. And it's really unfortunate to see the U.S. just completely dismiss that out of hand. Because the U.S. does want preconditions on the deal. They've had a couple demands they've been making on the Russians for a while. One of those being that they want the Russians to pressure the Chinese to participate in a separate nuclear pact that covers all three countries. Originally, they were actually, like, for a while they were arguing they wanted China in New START itself, but they kind of abandoned that idea. And now they've been saying that they want a new arms control pact with all three countries. However, the most recent precondition they've come up with, I think, is this demand that Russia put a 1 year freeze on its whole warhead, on all of its warheads, its whole stockpile. And that's like one of the major demands, I think, that Russia has not been down with. That was not part of their proposal to extend for 1 year. And the U.S. is demanding that the Russians not only agree to that 1 year extension, but also put a freeze on their warheads for the year. And the Russians, I think their position is just that, like, this deal is good already. Like, let's not start jamming new extra preconditions and demands and stuff in it. Let's just extend it, at least agree to do it for a year while we can negotiate on further things. Because there's other things that they want to talk about too. There's certain weapons they're developing that the U.S. doesn't even have. Some of their like nuclear capable cruise missile project, that whole thing. And so there is a lot of stuff to negotiate in this. And they're saying, hey, let's do that and not put all these demands up front.
Yeah. Well, one concern I have, Will, with the 1 year extension is that you have this coming period in the US where we're going to have an election and then several months of either a lame duck Trump or, who knows what the Trump administration will look like after an election victory in November. But if you only extend New START for 1 year, my guess is that the Hawks are going to come out and start saying that, oh, Putin's just using stalling tactics and stuff like that, and kind of, make it harder for the U.S. to negotiate with Putin in the future because, he's just delaying. And, if I have no idea what Biden would be, what positions he would be negotiating from. But it took the Obama administration a long time to get the Iran nuclear deal done. It's not like he's going to be ignoring his Hawks. I think, Samantha Power, Michelle Flournoy will hold high, level positions in his Defense Department. And look, if he doesn't, have a whole lot of mental capabilities, and look, there's a lot of problems here in the US, and so it would take a lot of mental facilities for anybody to figure out how to navigate, as president, COVID, the police problem, and then the US foreign policy. And so assuming that he doesn't do a great job with that and just leaves it in the hands of Michelle Flournoy, I don't think there's any reason that, the negotiations go smoothly, are able to get done in a year. So are there any more proposals on the table to go like the 5 year extension that's written in, because that's written into the treaty, correct? That, at the end of the 10 years that it was signed by Obama, 10 years, and then it was supposed to kick, you could either negotiate something better or just extend it for 5 years. And so is there any more talk of that, or is that just off the table?
Yeah, as far as I understand, the 5 year idea is completely off the table. Like, I think the Russian offer to do it for 1 year, I think that was trying to meet the U.S., like to go a little ways to meet them. I think the U.S. is not wanting this 5 year extension. It's unfortunate though, because like we did have like some reports, I think just like a week ago, that they were very close to a deal. They said I was reading something in Axios from like just over a week ago saying they had an agreement in principle and they just had to kind of finalize it. But apparently that was either an exaggeration or something abruptly changed now to where, now there's no, Russia's offer has been rejected out of hand here. So I think that's unfortunate because again, we are talking about one of the most important treaties in force on the planet right now. In terms of Biden, like I know he has come out and said that he'd be glad to extend the treaty. This is kind of like Obama's legacy that we're talking about here, so he would be down with that. But I think you make some good points that like it all depends on who's actually negotiating, and if he has hawks in there, his liberal hawk friends negotiating, then that might not spell very good for the treaty. Even though he, as president, says that he would extend it. And I think too, like the idea that this is Obama's deal, this Obama got this deal signed. I think that kind of shows us why Trump doesn't want to just extend it as is. Like I think Trump wants to boast some kind of diplomatic success, and if he extends it just as the agreement is now, that's kind of Obama's success. Like he wants to change it or add something to it to make that happen. But it's unfortunate because now we see them basically playing politics with this, where they're trying to, they want to, I think him rejecting the offer might even be some kind of like strategy or ploy that he wants to try to pressure the Russians to come to the table before the election by making a big deal out of this rejection. I don't know if that's going to work, but I do think that Trump wants to get something signed before the election. But now, I don't know if that it seems less likely than ever now that they've rebuffed the Russian offer. So I don't know what happens from here.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that I think the few fair criticisms that like general Democrats have Trump is that he would be too brutish in these negotiations. And so, look, if he waits till the very end, Russia just may step back from the agreement. I don't think they're going to let themselves be bullied here. And it seems that Donald Trump really tries to resort to those tactics. Now, it really doesn't help that since he's been president, this is kind of the one thing that the establishment Democrats seem to encourage him and agree with him on. But this was the behavior that they were saying was really dangerous and the reason we couldn't have let Donald Trump president to begin with.
Right, but then they love it when he does it with Russia, though, for sure.
Or,
How
even Iran, really. And
right.
do they really bother to oppose Venezuela? Or I guess they're pro, the maximum pressure on North Korea. Maybe they
Right.
oppose it a little bit on Cuba, but you don't hear it hardly
It's not in
ever.
their top 10 complaints for sure.
Right.
Like, if, their top 10, you wouldn't hear a word about any of those things.
Right.
So,
Other than Bernie Sanders praising Castro's education system, they don't seem to care too much about what's going on in Cuba with the people suffering and stuff. But anything else on this, Will, or should we move on to Afghanistan?
yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. Just like like it seemed like for a moment there were some reports. It seemed like they were on the cusp of a deal with this thing, and it's such an important treaty. But now it seems like they're wanting to play politics with it. And we even had the arms control envoy Marshall Billingsley saying, if Russia doesn't agree to U.S. demands before the election, then the price will go up for the deal, and that like they'll make it even harder to reach an agreement. So now it seems, unfortunately, this might be sort of out of reach. Like maybe we won't even get it extended by next February. The thing may just expire. So that's on a sour note. Let's move on, I guess.
Yeah, we're just playing with nuclear weapons here, so nothing to worry about. Um,
Yeah, no big deal.
so we have some tweets here by U.S. Special Representative to Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, who actually went to and negotiated with the Taliban over a couple years and came to what was called a peace agreement that really is kind of a misleading name, but what it did is it kind of called a ceasefire, at least between the U.S. and the Taliban. Well, last week we had the U.S. carry out some airstrikes against the Taliban when there wasn't really a situation, or at least I haven't seen it reported all by the U.S., that there were U.S. troops or international troops, so non-Afghan soldiers, under attack from the Taliban. But yet they were taking important territory and making an important offensive towards the capital of the Helmand province of Afghanistan, which is deep in Pashtunistan. So the U.S. carried out airstrikes, and apparently that attack was turned back. That we did talk about that offensive by the Taliban on the show, and then the U.S. bombings. And so after that, I didn't see until actually today, Will, the Taliban say that that was a violation of the agreement. But in between time, we had these tweets from Zalmay Khalilzad saying that the U.S. was resetting, I believe is the term they used, the peace agreement with the Taliban. So, Will, what do you have on this?
Yeah, I thought this is an interesting one, sort of a development on what we did talk about with those strikes last weekend, the U.S. strikes. And I was actually reading the Associated Press. They actually were writing about those strikes as if they continued into the week. So like, I'm not totally clear how many they actually did or how long those went, but it's possible that there was quite a substantial American bombing mini campaign over the last week. But something, as you're saying here, something does seem to have come of that, and we now have on Thursday the special envoy tweeting out this thing about a reset that he called in the Afghan or the Taliban peace deal. He said that him and General Scott Miller met with the Taliban guys and that they were able to agree to this reset. And he said that could mean that would mean less operations. Presumably that means for both sides. But he definitely said it for the Taliban, just like the way he worded the statement. That seems clear. That's what he means. The Taliban have been launching quite a few attacks lately. It seems like nearly every day. There was, like you're saying, a huge offensive last weekend for Lashkar Gah, the provincial capital of Helmand. That is like the Taliban's like stronghold. Taliban said they were just trying to take back some of their own territory the government had taken from them. But there's all kinds of conflicting and disputed territory out there, conflicting claims. So who knows what the veracity of that is? But the Taliban, though, like while they have been launching more attacks on the government, they have not been really launching those attacks on the U.S. And that is something that even Americans, the American officials, have even kind of confirmed repeatedly. However, a Taliban spokesman did come out and put out a statement on Twitter confirming that he did have these meetings with Khalilzad and Miller. And he didn't explicitly say that they had agreed to cut down on attacks on like the Afghan government or anything, but he did kind of suggest that in so many words. He said something like, both sides will do better to implement the deal and, be more careful and pay more mind to our responsibilities and that kind of stuff. So if that really does entail a reduction in attacks, that is pretty significant, I think. Because, as we've talked about before, the Taliban does use those attacks as sort of leverage in their negotiations with the Afghan government, which are ongoing right now in Qatar. They've been there for like a little over a month now, trying to hammer out some kind of deal. I don't think it's going very smoothly right now, but they're trying right now. But it would be kind of significant to me if the Taliban were going to reduce their attacks in the government, because that is sort of one of their bargaining chips. And so it's possible that will kind of smooth out the talks in Qatar right now, if the U.S. and the Taliban both are cutting back their presence and operations. So as long as both sides actually abide by that, that could be good for the deal. The Taliban, though, they did claim that the U.S. has been carrying out drone strikes and night raids, actually, still, which they're not supposed to be doing under the February peace deal. And so if that's true, and if the U.S. does continue those things, then it's almost certain the Taliban will not stop their attacks either. So, there's a lot that could happen from this, but it's possible this will mean a reduction in violence, and that certainly is always a good thing in my mind.
Right. And is there any indication on how this is playing out with, because I guess there's still ongoing peace talks that don't seem to be really making progress in Qatar between the Afghan government and the Taliban. Like I haven't read about any progress, so I assume it's not happening. Most of like the things I've read about, it seems they're arguing over details that nobody really thinks matter, like how many women are on each side and stuff like that. They're not actually talking about like I'm sure what will be the far more difficult discussions, which are how do you divide up power in the government. So if they're that far away, do you have any idea on the progress or how this plays in, Will?
No, I did see like when the Taliban spokesperson put out their statement, he did say that like when he met with Khalilzad and Miller, that they did tie this all into the talks. That like this wasn't a totally separate thing, getting them to to abide by implementing the deal with the U.S. more carefully. I guess they were tying that into the negotiations with the Afghan government. So there's I don't know, that might have some implication for the talks. He didn't give any more detail, and I'm not sure how else this will play into the negotiations. But he did say that like those two things were being discussed in conjunction. That like the Taliban implementing its deal with the Americans and while it's negotiating with the Afghan government.
All right. Anything else on this story, Will?
No, that's about it. I didn't have too much on this one. It was a good, I think, follow up though on what we talked about last time.
Yep. And we, make clips of the different stories we talk about on the show. So if you are following the YouTube channel, you could catch all the clips, or we share them on social media sites. And that way, if you're just like want to catch up on the Afghan thing, it's pretty easy to do. We like 5 or 8 minutes, usually these stories. Well, let's take a quick minute to thank the sponsor of our show and tell everybody about their great products. And that is Paloma Verde. PalomaVerdeStore.com is the URL. They make great CBD products that are, they got lab results for their products that you could check out on their website. That way, you're getting, the same quantity and strength in each product you take. And so that it's going to produce, consistent results for you. So it's great. Every morning I take one of the CBD soft gels, and, it continues to help me with just like the minor back pain I have, a little bit of inflammation and stuff like that. I talk to other people and they say they take one night, it helps them to chill out. And so that kind of stuff is great. And when you got a consistent product, you're going to get the same dose every time you take it. It'll make you feel the same way most of the time, help you in the same way most of the time. And that's why you should get your CBD at Paloma Verde. Again, that is palomaverdestore.com. And then at the checkout, you use the promo code PEACE, PEACE. You'll get 25% off your orders of $75 or more. Well, let's get back to the show.
All right, man.
Next up, we're talking about the notorious NDAA. This has been pretty much a topic of quite a few shows that me and Will have done over the years, either on foreign policy focus or now on conflicts of interest, because every year they stuff a whole bunch of really terrible stuff into these bills, Will. And this time it looks like the Democrats are trying to sneak something in to prevent Trump from doing one of the few decent things, kind of decent things. I mean, there's a couple qualifiers we'll stick onto that statement, but tell us a little bit about what this House Democrat has planned to do to the NDAA.
Yeah, sure. So, this, as people can see if they're watching the video, this amendment that's been proposed for the National Defense Authorization Act, the major like military funding bill, it's going to block the German troop drawdown that Trump ordered over the summer. I believe we've covered that on the show. We definitely talked about it on Foreign Policy Focus, but over the summer, Trump ordered 12,000 troops, around 12,000 U.S. troops out of Germany. Which will, I think, cut down the total presence by like a third in total. So that's fairly substantial drawdown. Unfortunately, though, about like a little under half of those are going to be sent elsewhere in Europe, and I think most of them will be going eastward, like closer to Russia's border. So that's one of those qualifiers that you mentioned. But the rest, I believe, like there's several thousand that will be going, I think, home, as far as I've read. So that's the good part of it, that some of these troops will be going home. And the Pentagon has tried to sell this as just like purely a strategic military decision, but I think everyone kind of knows that it has more to do with Trump's whole dispute with the Germans and their like contributions to NATO. Because under NATO, they're also each country is supposed to contribute a certain amount to their so-called national defense, to their military budgets, and the Germans have been falling short of that. And so Trump, I think, threatened a few times to pull troops before he actually ordered that over the summer. So that is like what that is supposed to be happening. It hasn't actually happened yet, we should note. However, now we have this Democrat in the House introducing a Democrat and NeverTrump people too in the Republican Party. It's bipartisan, has bipartisan support, but they've introduced this amendment to that would block the funds needed for this drawdown. And so, there's sort of a bipartisan effort right now to block this withdrawal and sort of slash redeployment. Because there are all kinds of logistic and travel costs associated with moving thousands of guys from country to country or continent to continent, and so that's sort of the angle that the Democrats and Republicans in the House are going for here. They're trying to strike at that funding to try to stop this drawdown, unfortunately, and they're trying to peg that into the National Defense Authorization Act as an amendment, which I don't think they're set to vote on until after the election. So there's still a little bit of time for them to try to make this happen. But one of the main Democrats sponsoring this thing, what's his name? Gallego, I think, from Arizona, the Democrat. He came out just this week and said that he's very optimistic that they're going to get this through. That like apparently they're racking up some support for this thing and going to make this happen. So that's unfortunate. Like we'll see if they'll be able to get this amendment in there. But the main author of it seems optimistic that they will. So.
Well, it kind of feels like a cruel joke, doesn't it, Will? Because for a long time, it's been I feel like the people in our movement generally that have tried to pressure Congress into like defunding wars or not passing as much funding for wars, to prevent a different president from say sending U.S. troops to Syria. If you don't fund that at the congressional level, literally the plane rides to Syria, then by the way the Constitution works, it's supposed to make it so that can't happen. Now, I mean, covert stuff is gonna happen anyways, but it is a way, for more overt, just kind of very open foreign policy. This is a very easy way, to like prevent the president from doing something, or it's supposed to be by the Constitution, and so now they take it and they're doing it to prevent Trump from bringing troops home. And so I don't know. That gets a lot more interesting to me. What if Trump says, "Oh, they're in danger, so I got to bring them home"? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I guess it would be a tough sell in a way, but at the same time, I don't know if he says it and claims executive powers and national emergency like he did on weapon sales to Saudi Arabia. I doubt Congress will stand up to him on it. And so I see this as potentially not mattering a whole lot, but yeah, I think a really important piece of this all is getting Doug McGregor named the ambassador to Germany. I think in that role he could help facilitate this, troop transfer, and also then as the discussions come up, well, me and you know from his appearances on Tucker Carlson and his columns at the National Interest and the American Conservative, that he doesn't want to send the troops eastward. He wants to bring them home. Like, that's his deal. And so, if every time, they're talking about German troops and then you have the ambassador to Germany in the room and, he's a retired colonel too, which, adds some military, status to his name, then I think that could be a real important thing to not only, starting to get these troops out of Germany, but hopefully, coming west, not east.
Yeah, absolutely. I would really hope they do get McGregor in there soon to start doing that because, like, we might be running out of time. Like, should Trump, not win re-election, I think Biden has said that he would just cancel that withdrawal outright. That he would keep U.S. troops in Germany, indefinitely. So he's like gone on record and said that he would do that, unfortunately. And so that would make this whole effort with the NDAA, that would make that kind of moot if Biden got in there. So yeah, like I would hope that, Trump puts McGregor in there soon and gets this thing done. I'm not sure when they're actually supposed to be doing the withdrawal itself. Like I actually was under the impression that they had already begun doing it, but reading some of the more recent reporting, no, it sounds like they're still planning it and trying to figure that all out. So there's still a chance that they could really block this.
Very unfortunate, but here's to hoping Congress actually doesn't block a troop movement here. But we'll see on that. Last up today, we have a story on the Iraqi militias, specifically the Shia militias, and their consistent run-ins with the U.S. And there was, I don't know, I felt like a very interesting statement overtly from an Iraqi, I believe, some kind of member of parliament. So a
Yeah.
member of their legislative branch said something about, if the Americans withdraw their troops, the Shia militias are going to stop attacking them, which I don't know, was, I guess, more blunt than I thought they would be about, potentially being responsible for some of these rocket attacks on U.S. bases or in the green zone of Iraq. That ends up, and I don't think they're U.S. bases most of the time, but Iraqi bases that house U.S. soldiers. And so, some of these attacks have killed soldiers or mercenaries or, foreign mercenaries paid by the U.S. government and stuff like that in the past, and have, resulted in, the escalation of tensions that, Soleimani gets assassinated, Iraqi missiles hit bases that house U.S. or Iranian missiles hit U.S. bases that house American soldiers. So, this escalates quickly, Will, and it gets very dangerous. But now they're saying the ceasefire hinges on a full U.S. military pullout, which I don't know, seems to be a very bold statement to make, right? Like that they're kind of bullying the U.S. out of Iraq with it will stop attacking you if you leave. So I don't know. Well, what do you think of all this? And did I get all those details right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, like, yeah, there's been all this drama lately with the Shia militias, or what they call the Popular Mobilization Forces. And anytime there is a rocket attack anywhere in the country, without fail, the Pentagon and the U.S. usually blames those militias, often citing no evidence. But like most recently, they have agreed to this temporary and limited ceasefire, which is supposed to begin today, I think, actually Sunday. Um, because, like, even if the U.S. isn't always right, every time they blame them for a rocket attack, like the militias do sometimes carry out these attacks. It's certainly, they're not like doves or anything. They can fight, and they do have rockets and weapons and stuff. But apparently they've agreed to stop those attacks for now, but only, if, like you're saying, only if the U.S. agrees to this like complete withdrawal. I think they said by the end of the year. And so the Iraqi government in Baghdad right now they're kind of between a rock and a hard place, because you have the U.S. putting all this pressure on them to get rid of or at least rein in the PMFs. And now you have the PMFs like demanding the Iraqi government by the end of the year negotiate a withdrawal. And so the administration of Mustafa al-Kadhimi, the guy in charge right now, he's kind of, he's got a lot of pressure on him. I don't really foresee him even though the militias, they are strong and like they are, they're a force to be reckoned with. I don't really see him like going along with their demand here. I expect he will prioritize the U.S. concern. I think Kadimi's more likely to try to rein in the PMFs than he is to try to negotiate a withdrawal from the U.S.
Well,
Because the oh, go ahead.
I just find it interesting because I think he's in the least powerful position of kind of the three parties here. I mean, obviously the U.S. government is a world superpower, but really
Right,
the PMFs are not only I think fairly still popular in Iraq because everybody knows the story of the Iraqi agile military turning tail and running, and then it
right,
was the end up the Shia militias that pushed back ISIS and helped to uh, you know I destroy but also liberate these cities of ISIS. And I'm sure sure people in Iraq look at that one way or the other, but these are popular people, and militarily they're powerful. There's a lot of members, they have a lot of weapons, a lot. I think a lot of the stuff that ISIS captured that was like US and Iraqi army, the Shia militias that took it back, and so
right.
at one point in time I think there were like armored vehicles in the hands that were once American. I don't know if maybe they had to give those back or something, but they're a very powerful group. And so I'm not even convinced that the Iraqi prime minister tries to rein in these Shia militias, that he really has the power, or that it wouldn't come with a lot of bloodshed.
Right, right. Yeah, his ability to rein them in is certainly very limited, as I think we've talked about before on the show. But I don't know. I just think he's more likely to try to do that than he is to like just go along with what the PMFs are demanding to get the U.S. out. Although I don't know. Like I think there is maybe some possibility here because we did just see Trump pull out like 2,500 or 2,200 troops from Iraq. I wonder if they could strike some kind of deal that like we'll minimize our presence to this certain amount if the PMFs stop doing, like maybe there is some kind of balancing act they can do here to figure this out. Obviously, you and I want to just see like when they threaten to pull out of the embassy over the PMF attacks. You and I are just like, go ahead, man. Like, oh, like no, don't. Like, please
Right,
don't.
yeah,
But
that's an excuse. Bye. you know
right. But unfortunately, I don't think the Kadimi administration is down to just see them turn tail like that. Like to them, that is a threat. And so I don't know. Like I would hope to see that like they can work out some kind of arrangement that does see more U.S. soldiers leaving Iraq, for good, hopefully.
Yeah, I feel like I'm kind of out on a limb speculating here, Will, but I will say it seems like of either the Americans or the Shia militias, if I were the president of Iraq, I would guess the Shia militias probably present a more immediate threat to my health. The Americans might remove you, but even like a removed, Iraqi president, I'm sure does pretty well, in retirement. Not, you're not living the life of like, a current dictator. You're no Mohammed bin Salman, but at least, you're alive and not brutally tortured. But you piss off the Shia militias too much,
Yeah.
it's gotten nasty in Baghdad before. Not to be too flippant about, but it could be real ugly. And so I could absolutely see the Iraqi government, and also the Iraqi parliament has passed resolutions saying to the
True.
U.S. get the hell out. And so it may just be time. But then you kind of see what's going on in the Trump administration. At least publicly, he seems far more interested about getting out of Afghanistan, where the government seems to be more actively working against it. Where
Right.
I think the Iraqi government is maybe a little bit more. I'm sure they don't want the U.S. to withdraw, over the course of 12 hours.
Right.
But overall, the Iraqi government seems generally in favor of it, where that is definitely not the case with the Afghan government.
Yeah, absolutely. Over the long term, I totally agree that like it is funny. Yeah, they've been I think keeping their like deliberations and stuff with Iraq more secretive too. Like they're being way more tight-lipped about all that when it seems like there's potential they could have some productive stuff happen. So
Well, if you got a minute, well, I just before we wrap here, one more. I was talking
sure.
about Douglas McGregor and how important that nomination would be for Germany, but we also have Will Ruger still sitting on the nomination slate, and there's this whole circus with the Supreme Court justice, and whether or not she's using notes, or if she's going to apparently be the lady that turns this into. I never watched The Handmaid's Tale, but from every Democrat I know, all the memes they post is apparently this lady's gonna put all the ladies in red dresses and bonnets. I don't know how it's gonna happen, but that's the narrative. But you know what? One thing we actually could do if Trump would prioritize getting his ambassador to Afghanistan through Will Ruger, I think that would really start to change like the bureaucratic pace of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and actually make it possible to have U.S. troops home maybe by the end of the year. I mean, I don't know if I really see under any circumstance the military leaving the Bagram Air Base completely by the end of the year, but I could, I guess, see them withdrawn to maybe like the U.S. Embassy and that air base by the end of the year if Trump was very motivated and had the bureaucratic pieces in place. And, you know, he might have to dismiss General Scott Miller or something like that if he's dragging his feet on this, or Mark Esper. But I think it is possible if he starts to put the right people in place. And Will Ruger's a good start on that. So I just want to keep mentioning that because it really doesn't get talked about at all. And with the you know Supreme Court thing going on, I feel like it's something to bring up. Got anything
Yeah,
else,
yeah. I
Will?
mean, yeah, just to respond to that, it's kind of frustrating that like that we're in this situation now. Like Trump is trying to make some of these withdrawals happen. He has personnel. He has these appointees who are sort of in limbo. They haven't been confirmed. I don't think has McGregor been confirmed. Is he still in the same position as Ruger?
Yeah, as far as I know, I haven't like I've been keeping an eye on it. I haven't even heard of like a hearing for it yet. So I assume it's
Right.
not gonna happen until after the election at best.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's what's frustrating. He's in his fourth year now in office. He's had all this time. He could have appointed these people, and now, like at the very last minute, he's scrambling to get them. Like, who even knows if he'll get them confirmed by now? But like, yeah, like he's just on the cusp of these withdrawals, and he's got finally good personnel. But like, he's running out of time. Like, he might not have enough time to make this happen. So, like he's starting to try. I'm certainly going to commend him for all the withdrawals he's done in Afghanistan so far. But it just seems like there's such an opportunity lost. Is all I'm.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, I don't think actually official troop levels are really any lower than when Trump took office. I think as of November they will be
Yeah.
is scheduled to be, but right now there's still the same numbers as when he took office because he let his second national security advisor HR McMaster talk him into surging in Afghanistan because for some reason that was gonna do something. Time that was,
Yeah.
anyways. Well, not to review the whole history of Trump's Afghan policy, so maybe we should just wrap here, Will. Uh, so, everybody, make sure you check out the show on YouTube and subscribe to it. Conflicts of Interest. Facebook, just Conflicts of Interest. Search it up, subscribe to the or follow the page. I think that's what you do on Facebook. Like it,
Yeah.
something like that. I hate Facebook. On Twitter at con_interest for the show. Or Will is the Will Porter, and I'm Kyle Anzalone_. And donate to the show on Patreon at patreon.com/conflicts of interest. Just the show is right there in the URL. So, Will, anything else?
That's it, man.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.